This risk is not worth taking. Allow me to be clear. If you take to the sea, you will not come to the United States.
Take to the sea. So what about the land? Interesting. There's a lot to discuss. Let's bring in Louisiana Senator John Kennedy. Senator, thanks for joining us. The administration says it will turn their back if these folks come by sea. The National Review had a piece out and it said, so this announced policy of turning back illegal aliens apprehended by the Coast Guard, but admitting those who turn themselves into Border Patrol represents a revival of sorts of Clinton's wet foot, dry foot policy, wherein Cubans caught at sea were sent back, but those who reached the beach in Florida got to stay. Only this time, your foot needs to land on the left bank of the Rio Grande. President Biden's already had a crisis at the U.S.-Mexican border. I mean, is this our next crisis?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that President Biden is not particularly interested in what's going on in Cuba and what's happening to the people of Cuba. You know, life is full of contradictions, and what's happening in Cuba is both beautiful and disturbing to one's core. I mean, it's beautiful because we're seeing the people of Cuba demand their freedom. The thirst for freedom is innate. It's instinctive. It's part of the human condition. Castro promised the good people of Cuba they would be free if they put him in power. He lied. He lied about socialism. Socialism is just trickle-down poverty, and the people of Cuba have had enough. President Biden issued a press statement. I thank him for that, but that's not nearly enough. He needs to be on the phone with every leader of every democracy in the world, Canada, UK, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, South Korea, India, every European nation. They need to stand together. They need to stand together daily. They need to demand change and declare their support for the people of Cuba. The president needs to be bringing all of America's cyber skills to Cuba to keep that internet open so the whole world can watch, because the Castro regime is now starting to kill peaceful protesters. But all the president's done is issue a statement, and that's just not enough, Sean, in my judgment. And he's ambivalent about whether if the people of Cuba make it to America, whether we're going to turn them back. So it is what it is, and it's not very pretty.
It's not very pretty right now. Senator, I do want to switch gears with you. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Bernie Sanders, they reached a $3.5 trillion infrastructure deal last night, and they've greenlit reconciliation to bypass the GOP filibuster. There's many fears out there that this will fuel more inflation. We're already seeing now consumer prices have increased 5.4% over the course of a year. That's the biggest monthly gain since August of 2008. We saw milk go up 7.5%, bacon, oranges up 8%, and gas, which is really people are feeling, up 45%. So what is the likelihood that this infrastructure package is going to increase inflation even more?
Look, Republicans aren't perfect, but there's so many people on the other side that are crazy, and they're being led by President Biden. I mean, I think the Americans who voted for President Biden thought they were getting the second coming of Barack Obama. Instead, they've got the second cousin of Bernie Sanders. I mean, think about it. I'm in shock. I mean, President Biden believes in bigger government, more taxes, more spending, more debt, weaker military, open borders, abortion on demand. I could keep going. I mean, his mantra seems to be, we can't possibly spend too much. These numbers are breathtaking. His recent announcement, after spending $2 trillion on a coronavirus bill to revive the economy after it was already revived, now he wants to spend $3.5 trillion creating welfare for the middle class. $3.5 trillion is $3,500 billion. We're going to run out of digits here. And this is real money. I've never seen anything like this.
Well, part of the reason,
he's like a. Go ahead.
No, Senator, I was just going to say, you're right. I mean, talk about crazy. According to a Morning Consult poll that came out, about 1.8 million people out of work have turned down jobs because unemployment insurance benefits. Congress has set this expiration date for the benefits in September. I mean, these benefits are directly related to why people don't want to go back to work. If you pay me to stay home, I will stay home.
Well, look, the economy is reviving. And we in Congress did what we had to do to keep the to keep the economy afloat. But it's back. I mean, as you pointed out, Sean, our biggest problem is we can't fill the jobs. Now, President Biden has promised repeatedly that he's not going to raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year. He already has. By injecting all of these printed dollars into the economy, it's led to inflation. Wages are going up, but inflation's rising faster than wages. This is a recipe for disaster. And I'll tell you what every fair-minded American is thinking to themselves. How could my family survive if every month I spent more and more on the credit card and just made the minimum payment? How can our country survive doing that?
They can't. Senator, I do want to get your take on this before we let you go, because the media is patting these Texas state Democrats on the back for their move to fly out of state to D.C. on a private plane, avoiding this Texas election integrity law to vote on it. Take a listen to this.
Getting out of Dodge, dozens of Texas Democrats flee the state in an attempt to block a voting bill they claim is a dangerous attack on democracy.
First, I have to talk to you about this threat to have you all arrested when you return to Texas and supposedly to track you down like the Fugitive Slave Act is still in force.
Today, President Biden traveling to the birthplace of American democracy to fight back against the Republican effort to restrict voting rights, calling it the most dangerous threat to voting in our history.
All right, so today you and several other Republicans actually criticized Myrna Perez, who is one of President Joe Biden's judicial nominees, who until recently was the director of voting rights at the liberal Brennan Center for Justice, for her self-professed belief in a living Constitution, which means she thinks it can change. President Biden has also said no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. Does this worry you, Senator, about where the country is headed right now?
Well, what President Biden wants to do is appoint people to the federal bench who will try to rewrite the Constitution every other Thursday to advance a left-of-Lenin social agenda that they can't get by the voters through their elected representatives. They want to do through the back door what they can't do through the front door. And all of these folks are nauseously woke. They all believe that America was wicked in its origins. They believe that America is even more wicked today, that most Americans are racist and misogynistic and ignorant. But they, on the other hand, are smarter and more virtuous than middle America as they sip their caramel frappuccinos. I think they're wrong. And I think the American people are going to demonstrate how wrong they are in 2022. I don't know what's happened to President Biden. You know, he says with the Voting Rights Act in Texas, he says it's the worst thing to happen to America since the Civil War. Are you kidding me? If he's the only person in the Milky Way who believes that. He must have been playing Frisbee out in the quad during History 101. To liken the voting rights bill to a war that almost destroyed our country, 700,000 Americans died, we're still suffering from the scars. Give me a break.
Senator Kennedy, thank you for joining us. You always bring a massive dose of common sense to a city that needs a lot more of it, so I appreciate you joining us and breaking it down.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.